What's going on, guys? Today, we are very fortunate to have Meagan here from GS1. Meagan, can you tell us a little bit about what you do at GS1?
Absolutely. So my name is Meagan Baumer. I'm a business development director at GS1 US, and my role is to get out there and work with and educate and support all the great e-commerce businesses out there.
Fantastic. How long have you been with GS1?
A little over a year. I started in December of 2021.
How is it?
It's great. It's an awesome place to work.
Fantastic. I mean, you're super knowledgeable. Some of the conversations that we've had so far have been eye-opening for me, and I have some knowledge in GS1. Even though GS1's a great company and they have a great worldwide mission, there is some confusion out there, and hopefully today with this conversation we can help you resolve some of the confusion. So Meagan, can you tell us a little bit about GS1 and what GS1 does?
Absolutely. So GS1 US is a not-for-profit organization. GS1 standards are actually the most widely used supply chain standards in the world. GS1 US is based out of Ewing, New Jersey, and we're best known as the administrator of the Universal Product Code, or UPC barcode. So GS1 US helps provide unique identification for products to allow items to move seamlessly through the supply chain. We also work with businesses to help create and foster the adoption of standards-based solutions, as well as good inter-business communication. Many of these standards help support regulatory compliance as well, particularly in the healthcare and food industries, where being able to trace a product through the supply chain can really help with patient or consumer safety. And as we all know, every consumer in general is getting more and more interested about where their product came from and how it was created. That was a big mouthful, but I think what's really important to understand is I'm here because myself and GS1 US, we really support Amazon sellers. We want to get out here and support the community.
We appreciate that. We really do. So great explanation. What exactly are GTIN identifiers?
Sure. So GTIN stands for Global Trade Item Number, and it is a unique number assigned to a product at the variant level. There's some other kinds of global identifiers that people are familiar with, for example, the ISBN in the publishing industry. The GTIN will be encoded generally into a barcode. That's generally how most people experience it. A couple of those would be the UPC, as I mentioned earlier, which we use here in North America, the EAN, or European Article Number, which is most commonly used in Europe, and the JAN, or Japanese Article Number, most commonly used in Japan. And the GTIN will be structured slightly differently depending on which kind of barcode it is intended to be encoded into. Most products uploaded on Amazon and Google will benefit from a GTIN in many ways. Number one, GTINs are often required to list on different marketplaces, so it's going to help you meet requirements. They're also going to help you meet onboarding requirements for major retailers. So if you want to get into a Walmart or a Target, you're going to need GTINs to do that. GTINs also help ensure good inventory management and sales by consolidating sales data and inventory data under one identifier. GTINs also help make better search results by allowing a better match between what a consumer searches and what a database stores.
Really? It helps with search results?
Absolutely.
I didn't know that at all.
Absolutely. It's a great idea to encode your GTIN into your metadata on your website, for example, and always make sure to have it if it is asked for, because it will definitely help unite all your data across your channels.
See, I didn't know that. It's those cheap eBay ones don't do that. Let's say I was an Amazon seller. Let's just throw it out there, right? So let's say I was an Amazon seller and I needed to get these GTINs. Where do I get them from? Where do I start?
Sure. So the first thing you have to know is it's really important you come to either GS1 US or another GS1 member organization, the one that's closest to you. When you come to GS1, your GTINs will automatically be loaded into the GS1 Global Registry, and that registry is what marketplaces will use to verify your business if they have a process like that in place to verify your listings when you create them. And there's two different ways to do them if you come to GS1 US. The first is for small businesses, those with only a few products, or maybe if you're just dipping your toe into the GS1 game, which is the single GTIN. So those are available for $30. You pay one time, there's no renewal fee, and you get a single number. The other way to do it is for more established businesses, those with a larger product line, or those planning to grow very quickly. And it's sort of the traditional way of doing it, which is to license what we call a GS1 prefix. And a GS1 prefix will allow you to license a batch of GTINs anywhere between 10 and 100,000, depending on how fast you're growing. And the GS1 prefix is actually great because it allows you to create other identifiers, including the serialized shipping container code and the global location number, both of which can help you identify places and your product as it ships through the supply chain. A lot of Amazon sellers, I think, don't think about it this way, but they are part of the supply chain.
I actually, so guys, obviously we had some talking points that we're going back and forth on. We both reviewed them, right? I didn't know that. I didn't know what you just said, so I had no idea that you could do that.
Absolutely.
Huh, so you learn something every day.
And especially as you grow, and if you want to get into brick and mortar retail, a lot of those things are going to start to become requirements. You can always come to us to learn about more if you need to.
Yeah. It's important to start off. Guys, I know a lot of times out there you're just starting out and people are looking for the cheapest possible way to dip their toe in the sand. I could tell you from experience, do it right from the beginning because you'll regret it later. You know, I've had so many situations where maybe somebody started off with bogus GTINs. I won't say where they got them, but say they're not right, they weren't correct, and down the line when they're trying to apply for brand registry, you end up running into problems. And it's very difficult, if not impossible, to change that GTIN on Amazon after the fact. So just keep that in mind. If you're trying to cheap out on certain things, don't cheap out on that because it's so important for your product to have the right identifier from the get-go, from the beginning. Next question, how can sellers create their own unique GTINs?
Absolutely. So after you've come to GS1 US, we have a great tool to help you do it properly without making any mistakes, and that is Data Hub. So when you license either your single GTIN or your prefix, that tool is going to come free with your membership to GS1 US. So you're going to get your GS1 certificate and you're going to get your login to Data Hub. And Data Hub is a tool that helps you, number one, it helps you create a UPC barcode image, send it off to your package designer or your sticker manufacturer. And number two, it's going to keep a list of all of your active and unused GTINs. And therefore, you know, say you come in and you need 1,000 GTINs, it's a little hard to keep track. So Data Hub is going to tell you, hey, these are the ones you've used, and this is how many you have in the bank. And there's a little bit of mathematics to creating the GTIN properly, and Data Hub is going to do that just for you, so you don't have to worry about making a mistake. That's
also the place, guys, when Amazon has errors and they say that your GTIN doesn't exist, that's the place to go get that screenshot. So all this talk about GTINs, what about UPCs? How are they different from GTINs?
So technically, the UPC refers to the barcodes, so the black lines and white spaces that you see on the back of a product. But often the term UPC is used interchangeably in the Amazon community with GTIN, and that's fine, as long as you know what you're talking about. The UPC in Amazon speak is the GTIN 12. So make sure if you select UPC, you use a 12-digit GTIN.
So I know you touched on it before, but why a GS1 company prefix though?
It's a great question. And you know, I think one thing that's really important to keep in mind about the prefix is it's really designed for a business that's growing and scaling. So if your product line is going to grow and scale, it's much more cost effective to license a bundle of GTINs in that prefix form than to do single GTINs. You know, so per product, it's going to wind up being a better bet for you. There's also a lot of other standards that the prefix allows you to create. So one of those things is the SSCC, or Serialized Shipping Container Code, which is a serialized unique identifier that you can place on logistics units like pallets or individual cartons, which can also be embedded in a GS1 128 barcode for your logistics needs. And as again, as your business grows, as your channels diversify, you're going to encounter partners that are going to require those. Another one that you can create using the prefix that you don't have access to with just the single GTIN is the global location number, or GLN. A GLN can be used to identify individual locations or legal entities. So you can have one to label your business as a legal entity and the headquarters of your business. But it is the same way a GTIN identifies a product, a GLN can identify a location. So if you're really working to enhance visibility into your supply chain and traceability for your products, the GLN is going to help you do that on a global scale. So when you start to get into RFID and EDI and these larger standards, these things are going to really help you in that space as well.
So let's say I was just starting out and I started with 5 products. Do you think it would be worth me just getting the 10? Right? You think it would make more sense to go that way because I would essentially maybe be scaling to 10 products in the future? What's the cutoff, do you think? Like if somebody should try it out, or I see the value of 10, right?
You know, I think it really is an individual business decision. I think it's, you know, but what I will say is that you can always call our member services department and they can sort of talk it through with you. It really, you know, if you are planning to get to that 10 products, that Prefix is probably going to serve you pretty well. If you're not planning to do it for several years, then you might want to skip the renewal fee that a Prefix has and just kind of go with the single. It also depends on, you know, your administrative staff and how many people you have to help make sure your renewals are paid and that kind of thing. There's a lot of choices that would go into it. But if you at all intend to scale and diversify your partnerships, a Prefix really will serve you in the long run.
Is it basically like reverse compatible? Like let's say I get one, can then I eventually get a Prefix? Can I roll that into a Prefix?
You can't.
You can't.
No, because a Prefix has a certain amount of digits at the beginning, depending on the size of your bulk, and that is the same number for every GTIN in your license. And so a single GTIN doesn't correlate with other single GTINs that way.
This makes the decision so much harder. I mean, it's a big decision here, right? So, wow. So with that being said, how do you know how many GTINs you're actually going to need?
Absolutely. So I think a lot of people probably don't think about how many GTINs that they're going to need. And I will say we do have a barcode calculator on our website, which is really helpful for this. But let me kind of give you an example to help break it down a little bit. You know, your product should be assigned a GTIN at the variant level. So if you have t-shirts, for example, and they come in 3 colors, you need 3 GTINs, 1 for each color. But if they come in 3 sizes, small, medium, large, then you need 9 GTINs, 1 for each color in each size. And if they come in, you know, 3 cuts, you know, a long sleeve, a V-neck, and a short sleeve, then you'll need 27 GTINs, right? 1 per color, per size, per cut. And so, you know, especially if you're an apparel company, often the single GTIN's not going to work for you for particularly these reasons. But, you know, a GTIN really needs to be assigned every variant. So size of the product, the flavor of the product, the packaging, you know, if you have specialty packaging for one line versus the other, these are the kinds of things you need to think about.
So what happens if I got a GTIN from somewhere else?
So sellers whose GTIN is not sourced from GS1 don't have access to the full benefits that a GS1 member would have. So for example, if you have a listing flagged for, you know, a GTIN problem, if you come to GS1, you can get your certificate, prove you're the owner of that product, and that's something you wouldn't necessarily have otherwise.
Which happens all the time.
And you know, it's something we talk through people all the time and try to help people through. But the reality is it's best to try to avoid the problem in the first place. At this point, if you are using a GTIN that wasn't sourced for GS1 on Amazon, we don't recommend you try to change it preemptively at this moment. However, if you have been flagged or suppressed, we really recommend you work with, that's the moment to work with seller support to try to have it corrected.
That's the scary part, the second thing you said. Like, I don't want to just, you know, scare people into things, but you don't always know when you're suppressed on Amazon. So some of it's obvious and some of it's not. So you could be using something you shouldn't, and that could be the reason why your products aren't selling. So not making any guarantees whatsoever there, that's the problem, but just saying you want to avoid anything you can that could potentially cause your product to get suppressed, and it's not always obvious. That's scary.
Absolutely. Well, that's why people come to folks like you, right,
yeah.
Patrick? It's a science now.
Yeah. So what issues have you heard from the Amazon community when they're trying to list?
Absolutely. So there's a few common ones we hear a lot. The first one is that a seller might not understand the type of identification they are providing when they set up their listing. So, you know, think back, we mentioned the UPC, the EAN, and now we're talking GTIN. Those are, you know, all structured slightly differently. So it's important when you set up your listing that you select the match to the number you are going to enter. So if you came to GS1 US, most likely your GTINs are in a 12-digit format. Again, that's what we're calling the UPC a lot. Make sure you select UPC and put in the 12-digit number. If you select GTIN and put in the 12-digit number, you may not have a match, And it's a really common problem, but it gets a lot of people. Another common issue that people face is they get an error that their details don't match. And what generally happens here is that they set up their listing, they list their brand name, they put in their GTINs, and then they get this error message from Amazon. What is often happening there is that when they came to GS1 US, they put in their legal entity company name as the owner of their GTINs, which is what you're supposed to do. And when they set up their listing, they use their brand name on their listing. So Amazon, went to run the check, and they see brand name and a company name that don't match. And so this is a fairly common problem that happens. You generally just have to reach out to Amazon and prove that you are the owner. So provide your certificate and some other source of identification that you are the brand owner, that your company owns that brand. So it could be a letter on company letterhead, or a trademark or something like that.
I could see that being really common.
Yes.
A lot of times your brand name doesn't match your actual entity name.
Absolutely.
So I could see that being very common. It's probably happening in more advanced people too. They might have multiple brands or whatever it may be, but yeah, that works.
Yeah, but from our experience, it happens at all size business. So again, it's definitely a common one.
It's Amazon's interesting. So as soon as they see a mismatch, it doesn't matter if you're setting up a seller account or if it's something like this. As soon as they see a mismatch, they just deny it. It's the easiest thing for them to possibly do. And unfortunately, guys, they're not going to tell you what it is. So it's good that you're watching this right now. This could help clarify that.
Absolutely. And the last one that we hear a lot about is you might get an error message that said the product you're attempting to list already exists. And this is generally often a case of GTIN hijacking, which means someone has used your GTIN and set up a listing using it. And this is a point at which you really need to get seller support involved. You can use your GS1 certificate, again, to prove that you are the owner of that GTIN, but Amazon, you'll need to go through Amazon to get that one resolved.
Did Eric tell you what ended up happening with that?
He did.
The recent one?
He did.
So they took it away from the other person? Mm-hmm. So don't buy fake QPCs, guys. Because whoever hijacked it lost everything. They lost the listing and we took it back over. So we essentially hijacked it back.
Well, no, you owned it. You didn't hijack it.
Now, luckily for that person, they didn't have active inventory. But if they had active inventory, all their stuff would just go, I don't know where. So, make sure you guys aren't buying those fake UPCs because something like this could happen. The question is, how does that even happen? Like, is it just by chance? Because when they're selling the fake ones, they're just, I don't know how they're making them, but.
Well, I think, first of all, Amazon has stepped up enforcement of this a lot recently. So this is something where your listing might have existed for years and had never been checked.
I can confirm for old stuff, you're finding stuff that's kind of a surprise.
Absolutely, and I think that's some of them. I can't speak to every situation, but I think that's a pretty common one, is just older listings might have a GTIN that wasn't confirmed at the time.
And that's what we're hearing right now too. So Amazon's from some other local folks, we'll throw it out there, Riverbend Consulting. So we followed their newsletter. And one of the things that they're talking about right now is where Amazon's focusing its efforts. So it's good as sellers to know where Amazon's looking, so you know if you're gonna do something, which things to avoid. Mm-hmm. And right now they're focused on listing quality. Mm-hmm. So that's exactly what that means. They're going back and they're locking down a whole lot of listings because of this. And then when you go in and ask them to fix something, they'll ask for these kinds of things. Mm-hmm. And that's kind of how they catch you. So it is happening now more than ever. So I think that's gonna be a topic for 2023. So everybody should stay on their toes. So what role does this all play in with listing hijackings? Guys, for you guys who don't know, listing hijacking is essentially when someone else comes onto your listing. You made a private label listing. I'm not talking about arbitrage, right? So you made your own private label listing and somebody else jumps on the listing and starts selling your private label product. So long story long.
Absolutely. Well, I mean, our best recommendation is to report it to Amazon right away. And if you have someone like the Skunk Labs in your corner, pull them in to help you, because I think, it's a complicated process. GS1 can provide you, again, that certificate to prove you as the owner of a GTIN, but there's a lot of other tools, out there in the wider world that can help you as well. And we know that this happens, and we know it's very frustrating for people, but we do hear a lot of success stories of getting it dealt with. So all we can say is sort of keep pushing through and draw on all the resources you've got. On
a side note, if you've exhausted all efforts and can't get them off your listing, reach out to us. We'll help you out. So what if I was a US seller and I decided to sell on multiple platforms, not necessarily within the US, so outside the US?
Absolutely. Well, the great thing about coming to GS1 is it is a global standard. So your GTINs are valid globally on different Amazon platforms or Walmart or eBay or any brick and mortar major retailers. You can still use your GTINs.
So if I go worldwide, I could get my stuff everywhere.
Absolutely. And, use all those great other standards like the SSCC to help you ship.
What if one of the people wanted to learn more about this? GS1 in general, supply chain standards, where can they go?
Absolutely. So the best place I would say to come would be to our website, gs1us.org. We have a learning management system called GS1 University where you can create a login and take online courses to learn a little bit more. We also have a YouTube site as well as Facebook, LinkedIn, and Twitter. So you can follow us on any of those platforms to learn more about what's going on currently at GS1 US. I think another really important thing to flag, and I know sort of sprinkled them in throughout, but please always feel free to contact our member services team. They are amazing, they're super educated, they are real people, and they will pick up the phone usually in less than a minute, and you can email them as well. If you have any questions, if you have a basic question or a little bit of a more involved concern, they can really help talk you through everything you need to know about GS1.
Thanks for coming in today, Megan. That was incredibly informative. Guys, if you have any questions or comments, please feel free to throw them down in the comments. Within the first 2 hours that this video is live, there'll be someone in the comments that'll be helping to answer questions that you have specific to GS1. Megan, thanks again for coming in today.
Thanks so much for having me.